Today's show is sponsored by Lightstep Incident Response, built on the ServiceNow platform used by over 6,000 companies worldwide. Lightstep Incident Response allows you to scale your incident response team without adding to your monthly bill. With intelligent on-call scheduling and escalations, you get the full context of your service health. Lightstep Incident Response immediately pinpoints issues and uses machine learning to send group text, reducing your time to respond. And you can seamlessly orchestrate alert and incident triage with on-call scheduling across Slack, Teams, Zoom, desktop, and mobile. So get started today with a free 30-day trial of Lightstep Incident Response by visiting lightstep.com/cloudcast. That's lightstep.com/cloudcast. And get a free t-shirt after your first alert or incident.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. As we continue to move along in August, it's starting to get into the kind of pre-kids going back to school season, but sort of the last month of summer that doesn't really start to get us into the fall, into school being back, into trade show season. So hope everybody's doing well. Another Sunday Perspective show. Excited to be back doing these Sunday Perspectives, hopefully every Sunday. I got a whole list of topics to kind of dig into. And this week, I want to kind of dig into, we're in a weird state right now in which, unfortunately, there have been a number of layoffs, but there's also a whole bunch of companies that are really hiring aggressively. So it's kind of a weird time. Our industry tends to either kind of shift one way or the other. So anyways, the reason I bring that up is, this is one of those situations, one of those opportunities in which a lot of times people are trying to figure out, who can I talk to for advice? Who can I talk to figure out if my resume is good? Essentially, how can I find a mentor in some cases? Who can I find to talk to help me with stuff? And in other cases, we see people that have kind of grown in their career, climbing in their career, maybe later stages of their career, and are looking to give back. We saw a great, LinkedIn profile from Stu Miniman this week, and Stu knows everybody, and basically said, hey, if there's things I can do to help, please let me know, and sort of encouraged a lot of people to do that. So it kind of got me thinking, maybe it would be good to walk through, kind of when should you seek out a mentor? How should you go about being a mentee? What are a lot of the things that should go on in that relationship? And kind of share some experience I've seen. I've been on both sides of the fence, sometimes good, sometimes bad. But maybe, go through a little bit of that and, just kind of walk through some common questions I see, some common scenarios that I've heard people talk about, some common scenarios in which I've been involved with and so forth. So I think I'm going to go about doing that right after the break. Today's episode of the Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog. Bring speed and scale to your security organization. Datadog Cloud Security Platform delivers real-time threat detection and continuous configuration audits across applications, hosts, containers, and cloud infrastructure. Built on top of the observability platform, Datadog brings unprecedented integration between security and DevOps aligned to shared organizational goals. As a listener to the Cloudcast, you can sign up for a free 2-week trial to see for yourself how Datadog can elevate your cloud infrastructure security posture by visiting datadog.com/security-cloudcast. Sign up now and receive a free Datadog t-shirt. That's datadog.com/security-cloudcast. Today's show is sponsored by CloudZero. For software-driven companies focused on growing margins, CloudZero is the only cloud cost intelligence platform that puts engineering in control by connecting technical decisions to business results. By analyzing cloud services like AWS and Snowflake, CloudZero provides real-time cost insights that help you maximize margins. Engineering teams can answer critical questions like, who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? What's the cost impact of re-architecting this application? With cost anomaly alerts via Slack, product-specific data views, and granular engineering context that makes it easy to investigate any cost, CloudZero is your complete cloud cost intelligence platform, connecting the dots between high-level trends and individual line items. Join companies like Drift, Rapid7, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast. And we're back. And, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we're going to dig a little bit into this sort of mentor-mentee relationship, what it should look like. When should you try and do one? When should you do the other? What are some tips and tricks and things to avoid and all those sort of things? So I created about 5 or 6 different scenarios in which I've seen both sides of the sort of mentor-mentee relationship and questions people have asked. And so I thought I'd walk through those. We'll see how long this lasts. This may end up being a shorter show, but I think this is one of these times in our industry where, we're always trying to tell people, look, you got to be thinking about your career. You got to take care of your career. But it's really important. I say this all the time. As much as we talk about tech in this industry, and we talk about tech on this show all the time, 24 hours a day, it seems like, this industry is really a people-driven industry. It's really about who you know, how you can work with other people, because we're always working in teams. We're always trying to come up with ideas. But that extends to, how you build relationships. And so, I'm going to kind of walk through some of this. I think the most fundamental thing is, forget about the sort of formality of mentor or mentee and that sort of thing, or coach or whatever people call it. It's really important to, as you're in this industry, to start finding some people that, A, you enjoy working with, but B, some people that you kind of trust and people that you can talk to about difficult things. Maybe you don't get along with your boss. Maybe you think somebody in your team is crazy or they don't do what they do. And you just need somebody to sort of vent to. And so, over time, as much as you find colleagues and people that you enjoy working with or doing things on the side, be looking for people that you can trust. And they don't necessarily have to be distinctly in your industry, but it is helpful because, you'll find there are some unique and weird things and unusual things that we do in tech that, not everybody is necessarily going to understand, the same way that, if you were hanging out with a bunch of doctors, there's probably things they would talk about that you would understand or any other industry. So, I think first and foremost, it's finding some people that you can trust, people that you can tell things to, that you can trust your life with, that they're not going to get out. Because sometimes you need to vent, sometimes you need to ask about things, sometimes you need to, so a rumor and you're trying to find out if things are real or whatever. So that's the first foremost thing. Over your career, build up some friends, build up some colleagues, build up some people that you can just trust, that you can call, and you just know it's secret, it's safe, you can vent, and hopefully they're going to have they're going to be willing and open to listen. Now, if you're trying to get into more of a formalized sort of mentor-mentee relationship, right? So you're kind of saying, look, I don't really want to be necessarily like friends with you, but I'm looking for somebody who can help guide me in my career. And sometimes those things are one and the same. People are your friends and so forth. I think the first thing to think of is it doesn't necessarily have to be a formal process. You may just find that there are people that you just connect with, that you relate to, and you can kind of bounce things off of them. And again, this kind of goes back to sort of building those friendships or those bonds with certain people. But if you're looking for something formal, there's nothing wrong with that. Telling somebody, hey, I really would like you to be my mentor. And I think once you try to make it formal, because again, maybe you just say, look, this is the way I want the relationship to be. This is the way it's going to work the best. Then what you want to do is you want to put some basic guidelines in, right? What do you expect to get out of it? What are you hoping to get out of it, right? In some cases, people are like, well, I just want to know somebody because they can help me find the next job. And that's perfectly fine, right? You're sort of trying to work off of the fact that they know a lot of people and maybe they can help you with some stuff. That's perfectly fine. You want to treat that, with a certain amount of respect because, they may be putting their name out there for you and vouching for you and all those sort of things. The second thing is you want to be respectful of how much time you're asking somebody for. Is it, one phone call a week, 30 minutes a week, an hour a week? Are you asking for them to do something more than to just have conversations? You want to be fairly formal with that because, one of the biggest things that you find in this is, it really boils down to two things. One, it boils down to sort of trust. Do they trust you? Do you trust them? And number two, it's a respect for time. Everybody's busy. As much as somebody may want to and be willing to mentor you, they likely have a lot of other things on their plate. It could be family, it could be work, it could be hobbies, it could just be they don't want to deal with work anymore today. So you want to really be respectful of that. If you schedule time together, be prompt, be early if you can. If something comes up, treat it as if it's a really important meeting. Don't blow it off. Don't not show up. Don't and do, basic hygiene, basic courtesy, send them a thank you, send them let them know how much you respect their time as much as you respect their information, their guidance, whatever that is. Now, the second piece I would say is sort of the question of timing, right? When should you look for a mentor? And I'll say this, I've been in this industry for a long time. I've had a chance to kind of be in a lot of different places. Early in your career, you have this perspective because a lot of times you'll be sitting in all hands meetings or, executives or leaders will talk about things and they'll say, hey, my door's always open. And, I'm really interested in hearing what you all have to say. And in a lot of cases, that's very true. But what you got to be careful of when you sort of treat that differently as sort of a mentor-mentee relationship is you may ask them some questions that in your perspective are really good questions, right? They, from your view of the world, from your status in the world, from your experience in the world are really good questions. And you may find that when you talk to them, given the depth of experience they have, the length of experience, the breadth of experience they have, it seems like a pretty small question. And sometimes you're going to get a pretty small answer from them because they're sort of like, oh, why am I kind of being bothered with something this small? And I don't mean that in a negative sense, but like, just be aware early in your career when you think you're asking the big question, that the people you're asking it to, given the scope of what they get to see and responsible for, may not always remember that you are in the position you're in, that they were there a long time ago, and you may not always get the answer you want. You may very well get a great answer, but just kind of keep that in mind. And you may also get, anyways, just saying, like early in your career, when you go ask that big question you think is a big question, it's okay, and don't be surprised if you get what seems like a small answer. Again, most of that has to do with just the dynamics of where you are in your career, the scope of what you get to see in your career, your responsibilities versus somebody who probably has 10, 20, 100 times the responsibility or is, seeing things that you've just never seen. So when you should go look for a mentor, I guess, typically what I would say is, as you're getting into like big career changes, right? Not, oh, I'm going to go from this job to another job in the same company. Probably not. Maybe even if just like, hey, I'm thinking about leaving this company and going somewhere else. Maybe not. It depends on how great your current job is or how great the next one is. But I think what you're really looking for in a mentor, or when you start looking for a mentor, is probably a couple of things. Number one, when you're going to make a fairly significant change, and that would be one in which you're, changing the trajectory of your career. Maybe you're looking to, you kind of think, well, should I make a lateral move because it feels like I can't move up right now, the timing's bad, or, so if you're thinking about making sort of a lateral move and you feel stuck, sometimes that's a good time to start looking for a mentor. If you're thinking about making a move that involves like physically moving, sometimes it's a good time to be early on with a mentor, because anytime you're moving, there's usually a lot more involved there than you think about, right? You may have family that you're moving, kids that you're moving. You may not know the area you're going to. You may not be from that culture. You may not understand the difference between the culture that you come from and where you're going. It may be a huge economic change between the two of them. So, if you're gonna physically move, that's a big thing. If you're moving significantly from one type of role to something that's very, very different, that's another big time when you may want to consult a mentor and sort of make sure you understand what that other thing is, right? Maybe you're moving from marketing to sales, or maybe you're moving from engineer to some sort of forward-facing talking role type of thing or whatever. Another time when you'd be looking for a mentor, and this comes up a lot, and this is when you probably want to have a mentor ahead of time, is you're going to come to some stage in your career when you get offered a lot more money. And oftentimes that means, the dynamics of what you do changes a lot. And so, it always sort of boils down to, hey, we'd all love to make more money or a lot more money, but what does that entail? And oftentimes a mentor has probably been through that situation. The thing I always tell people is usually when you're in a situation that somebody's willing to give you a lot more money than you do today, unless you just happen to be in one of these sort of freak hyper growth markets or you're in some area or something, typically that doesn't happen. And the trade-off that you're typically being asked to make is something, right? And so what you're typically at that point having to do is you're having to decide, what of all the things that are going to entail this new situation, which ones are really important to me, which ones am I not that, do I not care that much about, and which ones, are sort of make or break. And it could be the location, it could be how much you travel, it could be, how much you're away from home, it could be the hours you work, it might be the people you have to work with, it might be the scope of the work that you have, like how demanding it is, how difficult it is. You're probably not going to get a perfect situation. And so oftentimes you want to be able to talk to somebody and understand what are the trade-offs? What am I trading off? What does that really mean when they say, oh, it's 50 hours a week? And you're like, well, okay, does that really mean like 80 hours a week? Or when they tell you, oh, you're probably going to travel 10% of the time. Well, maybe that means 25 or 30% of the time. And, what is that going to do to your life? What's that going to do to your health? What's that going to do to your family situation? All those sort of things. So there's a few situations in which you're probably going to start looking for a mentor, hopefully ahead of those things, right? The last thing you want to do is sort of go into a mentor situation and kind of rush it, right? Come into it and go, hey, I want you to mentor and I need an answer, in 24 hours, right? In that case, think of it as more of a one-off type of thing, right? Like you're going to get an answer, but that person may not know you very well. Okay. Next question, or next sort of thing, what should the relationship look like, right? What are the dynamics of the relationship? And this is probably the most important piece because, you want to get as much as you give, oftentimes, and that those dynamics may not always be equal. You may be getting way more than you give back, and they may be giving way more than they're kind of getting. And but over time, you kind of want it to balance out. You want to understand what each other's personalities are. You want to understand what each other's priorities are, because if they're very different, even if somebody's in an interesting role that you want, or you think they're well accomplished, they may just have a really different view on life. They may have a very different view, a thought process, and that could be helpful to you, but you have to understand that. You have to understand what are the dynamics between you? Are you similar just at different stages in your career? Are you super outgoing? They're super introverted. Are they super type A? You're super type B, right? You want to kind of think through what are like, what are different. The other couple of things I've noticed is, I think we have a tendency sometimes to find mentors that seem like us. It could be men with men, or just certain things that are like. I've actually found a lot of times finding a mentor who is of the opposite sex is often a useful thing. You get a very different perspective on stuff. Sometimes they'll tell you things that you didn't expect about yourself, or about what a situation looks like. Sometimes it's helpful because just like in a life relationship, oftentimes somebody who comes from sort of the opposite of where you are can give you a very different perspective. So I think a lot of that is as you're looking for mentors, don't always necessarily just pick the person who's in a direct path to where you're going, right? Don't be afraid to sort of go, okay, what do I think I need? And what are some of those characteristics I think I need? And maybe seek out people who they may only be good at that characteristic, but for what you need, it might be useful to engage with them. Yeah. So next thing I had on my list was, what should both sides expect out of the relationship? And this is a really hard thing to answer because it really depends. It depends on the people. It depends on why they're trying to get into that situation, what in that relationship. In a lot of cases, it starts off being very transactional. Hey, can you help me find a job? Hey, can you listen to me, gripe and bitch and moan and that sort of thing. Over time, it becomes a more of a sounding board relationship. Hey, I'm going to ask you for some things. I want your feedback. I'm going to listen. Sometimes I'm going to get some hard things, and sometimes I'm really just kind of trying to learn. Right? I'm not necessarily looking for a transactional thing. I think the longer the mentor relationship goes on, the more you find that it becomes an outlet for things. It becomes a learning experience. becomes a sounding board for you to try things out and get feedback on them. And then I think the other thing is, a lot of times we think of it as, the mentee. What are they trying to get out of this? A better job, more money, whatever it might be, new skills, career path, whatever. A lot of times for the mentee, for the mentor, it's a chance to give back. It's a chance to see somebody grow. It's a chance to, in some cases you see people, you meet people, and you realize like, wow, that person is really interesting. They have a really interesting skill set. They have a lot of really interesting potential. And maybe, you see in them something that you knew in yourself at the time, you just didn't capitalize on it. The timing wasn't right. You wanted to go for that big job promotion, but you were starting a family, or it would have been cool to move across the country and travel. It just it wasn't right because maybe you had a family member you needed to be nearby. But sometimes, as the mentor, you see some of those things in people, and you're inspired by it. You're really interested in what's possible, and you're trying to. I don't want to say you're sort of living out some of your things through their possibilities, but oftentimes you'll see that in mentors. They see potential and they're excited about the potential because maybe it reminded them of themselves or somebody they knew. They want to see somebody succeed. I think there's a lot of people out there who just flat out want to help people. But it's important to sort of know what people's motivations are, and be open about that, right? The more you are open, the more you're transparent, you're going to find a better relationship. And you may find that by being open and transparent, that the person you're talking to is not the right mentor or the right mentee for you. And that's okay. Because again, if it's purely a transactional type of thing, can you help me find a job? Can you give me a recommendation? Can you introduce me to someone? That's fine. But if it's going to be a longer term thing, you do want to find a fit. You want to find, some area of common ground or some area of common goals and so forth. Next thing I saw on my list, and I only bring this up, is, should you pay for a mentor, or should you expect somebody to pay you to be a mentor or whatever, a coach? In my case, I've never asked or received, in that. I've never thought it was part of it. But I know for a lot of people, and I've seen this on resumes, I've seen this in people I've interviewed. I know there are people who are professional coaches, and I know there are people who, feel like they're very good at what they do. They have a formula for this, and they treat it as if, well, my time is valuable. It has a distinct value to it, and they do charge for that. So, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. I think it's like anything else. Be upfront, be transparent about it. Don't get into a situation where you start down the path with somebody and then you come back to them and you go, oh, by the way, you owe me a bunch of money. Don't do that to somebody. Also, if you go to somebody who charges, be conscious of that. And maybe there's a situation in which they have something really unique to them, and they'll cut you a break and say, hey, this one time I'll let it slide because I believe in what you do or something. But, also don't be that person who's like, I want a whole bunch of your time for free. Be respectful in both directions. And the last thing I had on my list is something that I experienced not too long ago. I was taking on a newer set of tasks and roles and some things that were interesting to me. And I looked around at sort of the group that I knew pretty well and people that I knew pretty well, and just made an honest assessment and said, they don't really have the skill set, the experience that I need. I made some, I reached out to a few different people I knew that were slightly outside of my normal sphere of influence, my circle of trust, if you will, to quote a Meet the Fockers reference, and got introduced to some new people. And I think there's times when, you have to ask yourself, look, if I'm really trying to get into something new or really kind of get outside of what people that I know, you have to be willing to do that. And, I had an opportunity to work with a couple of folks who, had a really different, and unique and useful view, in my case, on sort of go-to-market marketing techniques. But I think, there's a lot of situations in which that comes up. And so don't be afraid to do that. If you, you look around your circle and you're like, oh man, nobody here knows what I need to know. Don't be afraid to sort of ask around and see if, once removed, twice removed, 3 times removed friend or colleague or somebody who can put you in touch with somebody who can kind of, introduce you or help you, find a relationship, find something to learn, find a book, find a whatever, just outside of your circle. Cause there's times when that's just completely necessary. So anyways, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I've been going for 20 or so minutes here. And, anyways, hopefully some of that was useful. It is a situation in which, again, the best advice I can give is, make friends, make colleagues, make people you can trust early in your career. Try and continue to find people that you can trust throughout your career. There's going to be times when you need somebody like that or many people like that. They may or may not end up being your mentors, but they're people that you can go to that might help you find somebody who's good at that stuff. And again, at some point you will need somebody who knows something more that can help you with more things than you naturally know, or you just need advice. So I think it's a good process. I've been on both sides of it. It can be very, very helpful. But just kind of go into it knowing, how to make it useful, how to realize it's a two-way relationship, how to be respectful of whoever you're working with. And then, at some point, if you reach a stage that you can pay it forward, that's always good too. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Another Sunday Perspective show. Thanks to everybody for listening. I know sometimes people call these sermons. I don't know. I guess maybe they are a little bit. I'm the only one talking. So anyways, thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.